You're a newer player, first time tanking a dungeon, taking it kind of slowly, and suddenly the chat says, "Can you hurry up? Go faster, pull more." Or people start running in front of you and doing all the pulls for you, and you start feeling overwhelmed and you wipe. Sound familiar? Or maybe this sounds familiar. You're trying to get through your daily roulette, and the tank is pulling so slow, and you're just trying to get out of here. You got other roulettes to do. You got other stuff to do. You know, loitering in Limsa, that kind of thing. If either of these sounds like you, this one's for you. Let's get into it. So there's a powerful phrase that's used a lot in Dawn Trail that I think really applies to this disconnect that I want us to kind of focus on as we talk through this. Ignorance begets strife, and understanding begets fellowship. Rather than worrying about just my side, I want to think about how the other side is affected by my actions, whether this is for the newbie side or the veteran side. So the goal by the end of this video is for both sides to really understand and empathize with how the other side feels. And hopefully your takeaway from this will be to have that empathy whenever you're approaching content next time. To do this, and in respect of the hours that are put in, we're first going to talk about our veteran players, what they're experiencing, why they're in such a rush, and how to be understanding of that. And then kind of maybe address some of the more challenging pieces of how that's gone about so that it's better. So I've seen this a number of times in just scrolling through subreddits, scrolling through Twitter. A few of my community members have brought it up as well. It's very common for us as a community to really rush through our roulettes. Any of our dungeons, really. Our dungeons, our trials, we're in a hurry. We've done it before, we've done it a million times, there's a million to one. We're just trying to get through it, get our stuff for the day and get on with it, right? But how is this affecting the other side? How is this affecting the other players around us? Now, before you come at me with pitchforks defensively, I'll be the first to tell you, as a vet tank, there's nothing that brings me more satisfaction than grabbing every single mob from point A to the wall and taking them all out without anything going wrong. Mount Gold is still one of my favorite pulls. It's so hard, but it's so satisfying when you can do it. However, that doesn't mean that I'm not cognizant of the other players in the party with me. And the amount that I see people frustrated about the fact that they feel like they're getting rushed through every single dungeon is tough. The roulette system is a great system for keeping a constant funnel of players in older content so that newer players will always have somebody to play with when they're running through the game. And for what it's worth, the end game rewards are not bad. They definitely drive having better end game stats with materia and end game tombstones. So it's not like it's the worst system. However, it can be tricky having to play with essentially one hand tied behind your back is how I always describe this. Especially on more endgame classes. If I have, let's say, a Viper. Viper is fun once you hit level 100. 90 to 100 is still kind of fun. Anything below that, you lose Awakening, the class isn't fun to play anymore. But if that's what I want to play, and I jump into content and I go into Stone Vigil, a level 50 dungeon, I'm just kind of going through it, and it's not enjoyable. So what then would be my natural instinct? To try and get through it faster, right? So I start trying to pull mobs so that I can help get things to the tank more quickly so that we can get through the dungeon more quickly so I can get on with my day. Another example, this is my 100 millionth run of Castrum Oriens, and I'm ready to be through it. I run this thing so well, I've got it down to a science, so I can just shut off my brain and go. So I want to do that because I want to get through it because it's not exciting or stimulating to me anymore. It's really more of a chore. And this is the weakness with really any online game or a game with repeated daily structure, right? Is that you have to do things on repeat, and after a while, it can get a little boring. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. There's not necessarily a fix that formula right now that we're aware of, but it is the nature of things. So keeping these things in mind, veteran players tend to be in quite the rush to get to the other side of the content, so to speak. This particular piece will focus on the tank role because the tank more or less guides the dungeon. But the term is called wall-to-wall pulling, W2W. And the purpose of this is to gather up every single mob, get them all together, and then DPS them down quickly. It's very common practice in most MMOs from what I understand. Definitely common practice in Final Fantasy XIV. Veterans typically do this, one, because again, to my point, it is enjoyable. It is the enjoyable part of being a tank for me. And I can't say that's the case for everybody, but it is enjoyable. But also it's time efficient. It is very efficient to pick everything up, gather it all together, and then use your AoE damage to kill it all quickly, because everything will take the damage simultaneously. Things will die faster. It is just efficient, which isn't a bad thing. Efficiency is not bad. Now, as a new tank, the idea of doing this can feel super intimidating, and that's totally fair. It's one of those things that you really learn to do as you get more comfortable. Wall-to-wall pulling can be scary because there's a ton of mobs. You cannot see yourself. You are taking damage, and you can't control how much you're being healed, but you can absolutely control how many things are attacking you, is kind of the idea, right? Not only that, if your healer is an experienced healer, you're seeing your health bar drop pretty far before it starts coming back up again, because most experienced healers will not keep you topped off. If your healer is a good healer, they will not worry about your health being full all the time. That's not the optimal way to heal. We'll put the new player in the tank role for this example. To a new tank who isn't super comfortable with their abilities, it can be super scary. They don't understand healing and how an optimal healer works. They only know that they're taking damage from tons of sources, and so they want to take it easy because they are already under the anxiety of not wanting to wipe the party because they made a mistake. Now, I know what you're thinking. The best way to learn is to make those mistakes. You are absolutely correct. You can't learn your limits until you hit them. And I don't disagree with that sentiment. But that's also not something that you can just dive headfirst into. Not easily, not everybody. Some people can, no big deal. Some people cannot. Especially when it's a new dungeon, you are still getting comfortable with your class, and you have this pressure from the 3 people following you to make sure that you're doing the right thing. A lot of people, veterans, will say tanking isn't hard. And that's true once you're comfortable, and it's not hard to learn. It's not a huge step up from DPS, but it doesn't start out easy. There's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration. To the credit of the veteran experience, we've done this dungeon so many times that it's almost mindless, right? We're just trying to get through it. And in some cases, we just know the dungeon front to back. And if we are a max level player and running through content that is half or less of our level, then it's even less of a fun experience because we're basically fighting with one hand tied behind our back. Another common thing that veterans will do is they will get ahead of the tank and start pulling mobs. There's a couple of different camps about how people feel about this, and truth be told, I recently got a new perspective that changed how I thought about it, that I'm like, oh, that makes a ton of sense. I was the person who didn't really like when people ran ahead of me and pulled because I'm a tank. I don't really have that many things to do. It's pulling and midding. So why take this from me? But I read an interesting post that talked about how a lot of tanks like that because it brings the mobs closer sooner so that they're easier to pick up. And of course, it's more expedient if you're doing it that way. Which I was like, wait, that makes a ton of sense, because one of my biggest gripes in Dawn Trail dungeons especially is the mobs are spread out just so that I can only pick up 2 and I can't pick up the 3rd until my cooldown comes back. Or I have to run past them, or I have to go back. Where DPS picking up things ahead of me that then come charging towards me for me to just quickly spin is actually, in a way, a quality of life upgrade. You know what I mean? But that's perspective, right? That's having a different point presented to me that I'm like, oh, that makes a ton of sense. It's easier for me to pick up everything if things are being brought towards me while my global cooldowns are engaged. So taking that perspective into account, the reason why veterans do it is because, again, it's about efficiency. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And honestly, as a tank, I could see why it would bother you. Because again, there was a long period of time where I was like, man, I find that annoying. This is like my thing. Let me do my thing. But with that new perspective, I'm like, oh, that makes a ton of sense. And this solves a problem that I have as a tank. So that is the reason that DPSs and healers will pull mobs ahead of you so that they come closer and you can grab them. Another efficiency point. So these are probably the most common reasons why this happens, is everybody just trying to get through it so they can get to the next thing or the more fun thing. Because you have to do your roulettes. They have a value regardless of whether you're max level or leveling alternate classes. Rather than telling you that veterans doing this isn't okay, I would really rather share with you the why and help you to kind of understand the other perspective. But what is this causing? What is this doing to the new player experience? I'll put a quick pause right here because there's one big thing that happens often in this game that really grinds my gears, and that is when players are in such a rush that they're not willing to wait for cutscenes that newer players haven't experienced yet. I don't think this is the most common thing. I feel like people wait more often than they don't, but I at least see it a couple times a week, and that's a couple times too many. Because again, it's their first time. We'll kind of get into this a little bit more later, but I wanted to make sure I touched on that one point. This is something that very much frustrates me. And regardless of anything else, there's zero reason you can't wait for somebody to watch their cutscene, even if it's just a dungeon cutscene. But think about how negatively that can impact the experience. One of the things I talk about in one of my other videos is why healer is a bit of a stressful role to start out as a new player. I think that that's the case no matter what. However, the mentality that comes from veteran players and rushing things only compounds that to an even higher degree. So having that empathy and understanding of how the new player will feel in a given situation is important. There's also that consideration of sometimes tanks just don't know. But let's zoom back out from the tanks for a second and look at the other potential roles that a new person could be in. If they are a healer, the pressure of having to heal for somebody who's pulling wall to wall can be so stressful. I'm convinced that people who want to play healer and come to 14 and have a bad experience because of a lack of consideration for their role are the highest percent chance likely to quit. That's why in my last video I said healer is not a strong role to start out on. It's already difficult for a new player to understand healing, especially if they're new to MMOs, but even worse when it comes to the pressure of a veteran tank dragging them through the dungeon they have to figure out how to keep up with. There are solutions to these problems, but they're all things that we as experienced players know through experience. We've learned how to do that stuff. And so when I see a comment that says, well, you just need to learn how to use the sprint button. Yeah, that's correct, but that's not how you present that to somebody who hasn't done it before. They're learning building blocks. You can't just know everything all at once. You can't read a guide once and be like, all right, I will do all these things correctly every time in real time. That's just not how it works. People wouldn't have test taking anxiety. People wouldn't have interview anxiety if you could just read the thing and do the thing. That's just not how it works. And so having the empathy and understanding of that as somebody who has been playing for a long time and who has been through that experience at some point in their Final Fantasy XIV adventure has had, right? Now, there's a few common things that you'll see people give as an answer to this challenge that we're going to kind of go through one by one, because some of them are very much true and accurate. There's also some that really have no place in the discussion, and I think that it's important to address that as well. A lot of veteran players will say, I am more than okay with being understanding and slowing things down if a new player or a sprout communicates to me that they need me to. And that's totally fair. If you are a sprout and you have the means to communicate, you should definitely not be shy about saying so, because I would safely say the majority of players will be understanding if you tell them that you're new, that you're nervous. They'll offer tips, they'll take it at the pace that you need. They just need to know that on the outset. But veterans, consider this. Let's say I am a console player. I don't have a mouse and keyboard plugged into my console. I don't have a mouse and keyboard. Therefore, I don't have a way to communicate with you that's not gonna take me a year and a half. Or if we've already started and you say something to me that you expect me to respond to, I'm probably not gonna be able to do it. And someone could say, well, yeah, you can get a keyboard for really cheap, but again, you don't know people's situations, so you don't know how easy or difficult that may be. And I could give tons of examples of where that might be difficult, but it doesn't matter. None of that matters. What matters is consideration of the other person when you don't really know anything that's going on with them. Also worth noting here, some people just genuinely don't know that they can plug a mouse and keyboard into their console. I see replies like that all the time. So if you as a new player are able to communicate, you absolutely should do that somehow. And who knows, maybe we as a community need to come up with you put a marker over your head at the start that lets everybody know, like, oh, don't go hard on me. That's not what I meant. Go easy on me, I'm small. That's like, let's take it slow, I'm new at this. But let's think about those solutions, not continuing to throw the same what we think is the best way instead of thinking of new ways, because there are many routes to achieve the same goal, right? On that same token, something that I have a strong practice of whenever I'm playing is if I am the tank, I will immediately check for anybody who's not synced or anybody who has a sprout icon. If I see that they are not synced, or if I see that they have a sprout icon, I will ask them to pace. Granted, I really only give this luxury to my healer because, again, I think healing is very stressful. I love healing, but I think it's a very stressful thing to do starting out. And if I'm pulling at the rate that I want to pull, I don't want to freak them out or put them in a crappy position. And oftentimes the answer I'll get is go ahead and go at your pace and then we'll slow down. Or they'll be like, oh, I don't know. And I'll be like, okay, let's just try doing it once. And then if it doesn't work, we'll scale it back. Because then that gives them the ability to test their limits in that way that we as veterans know is the way to learn, and still being cognizant of the fact that they need that extra TLC, right? This is really about creating a safe space. It's reading the room. Reading the room as somebody with experience, you're going to be able to read the room better than they will. Extending that thought first will save a lot of pain points for both you and the new player, because you have the experience to do so. You know, but they don't necessarily know. And honestly, it can make some of that older content a lot more fun when you get to take it through this extra lens or experience where you're kind of mentoring. Because let's be honest, the mentor crown, it's kind of, I don't want to say a decoration, but that's a topic for a different discussion. But to get back to the point, new players, when you are able to communicate, because that's how everybody's going to know that you need a little bit of extra time to get comfortable. And who knows, maybe they'll be, honestly, in a lot of cases, they'll probably be very understanding people who are like, hey, you want to try pushing this harder? We'll support you. Honestly, people don't really get mad when wipes happen unless they're playing high-end raid content. That's when people get mad, and you're probably not doing that. You're probably running through a normal dungeon. And people will typically, not all the time, be pretty patient of that. You're going to hit those outliers. You're going to hit those assholes who are going to give you so much crap and quit out of the party. But those are very few and far between. And it would break my heart if that was what defined your experience of Final Fantasy XIV, because that is not common. That is not the way it is all the time. And veterans, if you're not seeing that communication, but you are perceiving that there is something going on, something weird, read the room and adjust your actions as the experienced veteran player to help facilitate a better experience for the entire party. There's also a couple of critical points though that need to be addressed. One of them is you pull, you tank mentality. It's not conducive to making things get completed efficiently if somebody pulls something and then you just let them die because they pulled it. It's about understanding the reasoning why they're doing that. At the same time, and I'm just gonna put this out here blanket, because I see it constantly. You pull, you tank is not a reportable offense, and people like to throw that out as an argument. If you act like that, you can get reported for it. It is literally not correct. There's a whole section that talks about griefing. This has nothing to do with that. So stop saying that to people. It's not a thing. The important thing that I think people are commonly forgetting is that some of these things are norms that have developed over time in the community, but they are not rules set forth by Squeenix or by the 14 team. They are just things that we collectively as a community do and have kind of decided on. So that's not reportable. Stop saying that to people. But you pull, you tank mentality is also not conducive to strong teamwork or, social interaction. People pull, sure, there's a reason. Take the time to understand it. If they're pulling mobs for the reason that I mentioned earlier in this video, then now hopefully you'll understand that's why. On the other hand, I personally do dislike when a non-tank pulls the boss. I don't think that there's any good reason that should ever happen, because for whatever reason that the tank isn't pulling the boss right away, they're the ones who need to take the aggro, right? So if let's say I pause for a second to drink some water, I do pretty regularly, and you pull it, then, everything's kind of awry. Everybody kind of follows the tank in that regard because they're the ones who are expected to take the hits. But outside of that circumstance, I think it's typically not that big of a deal. And that's a personal gripe. That may not necessarily be how other people feel, but it is important. There was a particular Reddit post that I read a while ago that was basically a new player feeling frustrations about the experience that they were having as a tank with people pulling in front of them. And it's okay to feel frustrated, right? Everybody's feelings are valid and oftentimes come from a lack of understanding, and that's okay. Their expressions weren't necessarily negative, they were just frustrated. But the comments were swarmed with people who got super frustrated and defensive and attacky at them, which is not conducive to helping them to understand. They just told them what was right and that they were wrong. There was one in particular, and I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I'm going to reference it, that opens with, "You are the one in the wrong," in big bold letters. I'm going to tell you right now, if I'm reading that, I'm not receptive to it. This wasn't even aimed at me, and I'm like, this guy. But they say things to the effect of, by choosing to tank, you're agreeing to uphold social expectations. I'm gonna be fully transparent. That's nonsense. It is a game for everybody to play. Just because you were playing it first doesn't mean you get to dictate how other people get to play it because they came in later. That's not correct. It's objectively not correct. If you're in a group of people who have agreed that this is how they're gonna run it, then of course run it. Run wall to wall, pull things quickly. Have the DPSs and the healers all pull things too. Make it happen. Get through the dungeon fast and get on with your day. But if that's not what the whole group is agreeing on, then you have to be considerate of the people who are not following that because they can't or they won't. That doesn't make them wrong. It just puts them at a different place than you are, and that's okay. That whole block of posts got under my skin, but that top point telling them that they are in the wrong in big bold letters, one, get off your soapbox. But the thing that ended it, and this is one of those big ones that I feel like is said often and needs to change, is duty support is right there. Duty support is not there so that vet players can experience the game at whatever pace they want, and anybody who starts new can go figure it out themselves. It's a massively multiplayer online game. It is an MMORPG. There are RPG elements that are solo, and there are MMO elements that are together. Duty support is not there so that the veteran experience doesn't have to suffer from new player experience. Stop saying that to people. It's not correct. That is not what it was designed for, and I'm sure you know it when you say it, so don't say it. If people need duty support for something and want to go use it, that's fine. But if people come to the MMO to play with people, that is absolutely fine. Back in my day, we didn't even have duty support. We just had to deal with it. And that's fine. So if people want to experience the game that way, then that's also fine. It is not there as a tool for them to have to use so that you can have an experience that you want to have. The big thing that I feel like is forgotten often is that we were all new players once too. We all had our version of this, of having to go through things at a pace that may not have been the most comfortable for us. I really wanted to look at all the little leaflets as we were going through dungeons, and I never got that opportunity because that's just not how things work. I didn't communicate that because I was also a little bit nervous and shy, and that's on me. And I could go back and do it now. I just don't, for not any particular reason. I just don't. That's also fine because that was on me to not communicate what I wanted there because I was being shy. And so no one would have any way of knowing that, right? Knowing that you were a new player once and had similar experiences means that you should have the empathy of anybody who's coming through that's now in that position. I'll say this again. If you love 14 and you want to encourage new people to play, you have to facilitate that experience for them as well. And if you're being a negative Nancy or a jerk because it's not going the way that you want it to, it's really hard for them to get into the game. And of course, new players, making sure that you're communicating what your needs are as a new player and that you're a new player. I have my friend who got me into 14. Whenever we get into new content, he still communicates every time I'm brand new at this. He's been playing longer than I have, and he's still, every time we've gotten into a new raid, he always says, this is my first time, because he wants to make sure that that's known, that if he makes mistakes, that there's a reason. So making sure that you're communicating is important. So do your best to do so in every opportunity so that the veteran players can also understand where you're coming from. Ignorance begets strife. Understanding begets fellowship. And so my big hope is that your takeaway from this video, besides breaking some really bad habits that we have as veteran players, is that you really take the time to understand and connect. Because if we can understand where each other is coming from, then we can create a more positive play experience for both ourselves as veterans and for the new sprouts that come along to enjoy the game as well. I want them to be able to have the passion that I have for the game without quitting out early because of some silly fool on the internet, you know? And since mentor crowns are kind of a joke, it's up to us as veterans, regardless, to be role models and mentors for new players, crown or not. If you like this video and you want to see more content, I would super appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps me to grow the channel. And if you want to see more of me On other mediums, I do stream on Twitch a couple nights a week. Links down in the description. If you're looking for a community to connect with in 14, whether you're a free trial player, a veteran player, a returning player, or a brand new player, the AzureRogues community, which is a community that have been building for a while, is available to you. It's if you are a free trial player and you don't have the means to communicate with people, you're able to find resources within. You can ask all the questions that you like. If you're a returning player and your FCs are dead and you're looking for good company, look no further. We do also have a free company on Crystal Coeurl and Dynamis Rafflesia, and may potentially expand to other places in the future. But if you are looking to join any of these free companies, I assure you, they're not dead. We are excited and looking for more people who are looking for more of that social experience. With that all said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.